Today on the Women's Health Beat, Dr. Felice interviews Ashley Levinson, the PCOS girl, right here on the Zubia Live channel. Hello, I'm Shane Schultz, the executive producer of the Zubia Live channel. Zubia Live is your interactive live streaming video community that specializes in health and wellness topics that affect you. You can always find us on our social media at Zubia Live or our website, zubialive.com. Today, we have another wonderful episode of the Women's Health Beat hosted by Dr. Felice Gersh. Dr. Felice is board certified as both an OBGYN physician and integrative medicine and has helped women worldwide with her efforts and her knowledge. Today, Dr. Felice interviews Ashley Levinson, the PCOS girl, as they discuss what it's like to live with PCOS or chronic illness on days that end with Y, including the holidays. But before we get started, we'd like to say thank you to our sponsor, Soluma. Soluma is your light therapy device that treats a variety of skin and pain conditions using proven technology to relieve everything from muscle and joint issues, such as arthritic pain, or facial wrinkles, and even acne. If you'd like to learn more about Soluma, visit soluma.com. All right, without further ado, please welcome Dr. Felice Gersh.
Welcome to the Women's Health Beat. I am Dr. Felice Gersh, your integrative gynecologist and specialist in PCOS. And I am thrilled to have as my guest tonight, Ashley, also known as PCOS Girl. Welcome, Ashley. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is such a pleasure. I'm sure you remember when we met back in 2016 in Atlanta at the PCOS Challenge Conference. Remember that? And it was such an amazing conference. And I got to meet a lot of women suffering from PCOS and amazing advocates like you, who is all over the social media and talking and helping women with PCOS. I was hoping you could share first a little bit about your story as a PCOS lady.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity to tell my story. My story started really a lot like many other women you hear that have PCOS. I was 13 years old and I was experiencing weight gain, acne, irregular menstrual cycles. It got to the point where they were so severe that my mom said, I think it's time to go see somebody. Took me to a gynecologist, and at age 13 they put me on the birth control pill without any further explanation as to why. Besides, the only explanation that I got is sometimes girls have a hard time coming of age. Just take the pill, and when you're old enough and you get married and you want to have kids, come back and we'll talk about it. So I did exactly that and stayed on the pill until I was 29 years old.
Oh my gosh, from 13 straight to 29, no lab tests, no tests of any kind, I take it.
Nothing, and throughout that period of time, I did have fluctuations in weight. At one point, when I was 16, I went to a weight loss camp. That was a really positive experience, and it helped me lose weight and keep things under control. And then it was kind of like a Richter scale. It was up and down throughout this period of time, and you would notice little things like hairs on the chin and the acne again and the dark skin patches, but no one again was making a connection, and all said that it had to do with puberty.
29, you can't say it's puberty.
Not at 29. Not at 29.
Not a puberty explanation.
Right. And after I went to the weight loss camp, I had kept that weight off pretty much all that time because I was on the birth control pill, so it was regulating my hormones to some extent. So I went off the birth control pills at 29 because at that time my husband and I had decided we wanted to start a family. I went off the pill, and within literally a 3-month period, I put on close to 100 pounds. And I had not changed my exercise regimen, my diet regimen. I started going to doctors, my family doctor I started with, who basically told me, you have to be stress eating. Maybe you're eating in your sleep.
No, sleep eating excuse.
sleep eating. That there's no way that you're not stuffing your face. And I kept saying, I swear, this is important to me. I've been through the weight loss camp. I know what it entails to keep things under control, and I can't control it. I went to 3 or 4 more doctors, and the same exact thing. There's nothing wrong with you. It's stress. It's stress because you're trying to get pregnant. Just relax and everything will work its way out. It wasn't until I went to a doctor that had really just finished his residency. I said, you know what? I've been to 4 or 5 doctors, but I figured, what the heck? What's one more doctor who thinks I'm absolutely crazy? Told him my story, and his eyes got real wide, and he walked out of the room. He came back in with a textbook, opened up the textbook, and there it was, the definition, PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. So I'm looking and I said, okay, I know the name of it, but what is it? And he said, honestly, I really don't know much about it, but I'll learn with you. At that point, I pretty much took to the internet to find anything that I could. What people don't understand is when I started this was in 2000. And people say there's not a lot of information about PCOS out there now. There was even less when I started. So I found one organization that was in the little corner of the internet, and I started talking with other women who were experiencing similar symptoms, similar ignorance from their medical providers, and we all started advocating and working together to build a network. And over time, we had organizations that started popping up. We've had doctors who have, like yourself, who have taken the time to research and to educate people properly about the condition. And we are really very far ahead from where we were when we originally started. However, we're still kind of in the dark ages. So it was out of frustration from not having the proper information available to me. It led me to 17 years of patient advocacy for PCOS and chronic illness.
Well, that is a triumphant story, absolutely. And I have to ask you, did you get a baby?
I got 2 babies.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful to hear. That is great. So it's a really happy story, and I can see that you've spent really 17 years focused on PCOS. So that is an amazing accomplishment. And you know, with all of that time and energy spent, what would you say would be, let's say the 4 most important features of PCOS and that you would like to talk about, and tips for women out there who have PCOS that you've learned from your own experience and from all of the interactions you've had?
I have what I call my pillars of PCOS. There are 4 things that I typically talk about when I am discussing the syndrome. Number 1 is understanding. For people to really know what you are going through, they need to understand what it is that you're dealing with. A lot of times we get caught up in the facts, the numbers, the statistics, but we're not really explaining to people how that impacts our personal life. So I can go to someone and say, I have PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. It's an endocrine disorder. It affects 1 in 10 women. It's the leading cause of infertility. And they'll look at me and go, oh, okay, that's great. But if I sit there and I say to them, I have a condition called polycystic ovary syndrome. It's an endocrine disorder, and it affects me in A, B, and C ways. And it makes me feel A, B, and C because I'm dealing with these different things. People can relate to it more because they understand how it affects a person. And it's different than looking at something black and white or just having a snippet. And I think that's very important for anyone who's living with chronic illness to understand that in order for people to understand what we're dealing with, we have to take the time to explain to them, and for them to, my second pillar, listen. People have to be willing to listen to what you're saying. There's a difference between hearing someone and listening to someone. It takes time, it takes trust, and whether they're your friends, your family, or even a medical provider, you have to establish a relationship and a trust so you're able to talk to one another and tell someone if you're having a bad day or if there's a sensitive issue with a symptom, that you're able to talk to these people about it. I don't think people nowadays listen enough. I think we've become kind of desensitized because of the way healthcare is nowadays. A lot of medical professionals don't have the time to spend with their patients. So a lot of times you feel like you're being rushed through the process. With a condition like polycystic ovary syndrome to be diagnosed and treated properly, it takes time on both ends for you to explain what's going on and for the medical provider to be able to put those pieces together. So listening is another one. And as far as listening is concerned, we have to be mindful of what we are saying to these medical professionals, because a lot of times, my third pillar, there are stigmas that are associated with the condition. Many women go through struggles on a daily basis, again, with symptoms that I talked about: adult acne, excess facial and body hair. A lot of women deal with either being overweight or underweight. They feel broken, embarrassed, and afraid to really talk to someone, even if it is a healthcare provider, about what it is they're dealing with. And again, that goes back to, if we're not willing to talk about it, people can't help us. So we have to, again, establish that it's okay to not always be okay. And it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you're different from other people and that you can't be loved or respected because you're dealing with a chronic condition. It just means that you may need a little extra help and understanding. The other thing is, for me, has been guilt. Because there's so many things going on with me, and I have to sometimes rely on other people, and I have to learn how to communicate well, and I'm dealing with the symptoms of a chronic illness, I often feel like it's my fault if I'm not projecting that properly with my medical professionals, with my friends, with my family. I feel like I'm doing something wrong because I'm dealing with a chronic illness. And it's not something that I can control, and it's taken me a long time to kind of say it's okay to be sick sometimes. It's okay. And that you find the tools and the resources to live the healthiest and happiest life that you can live with the condition.
So Ashley, that was a wonderful, wonderful piece of information, and your feelings are really what I'm hearing. And the message that I'm hearing is that for women with PCOS, it's critically important for them to learn how to communicate what they're experiencing, to put a human face on their condition. So it's not, like you said, it's just a pile of symptoms. It's about a person. And then secondly, it's about really being able to let go of the feeling that there's something wrong with you, that you're just damaged, that you're another person and you have a few things that you have to deal with, and it's okay if sometimes you are imperfect, and it's okay to be emotional sometimes, you know? Like, I felt your emotion right there, and it is okay to have emotions. We don't have to be living behind a mask, you know, that we can be open about our emotions, our feelings, be able to communicate them, and women with PCOS being able to share their stories with other women with PCOS. I think that's a very healing experience. What have you seen in regard to the healing experience of women sharing their stories with you and PCOS Girl, and how that's all worked for you in your own healing journey?
Wow, it's empowering. The first time I kind of stepped into, for lack of a better term, the arena, the healthcare arena from the patient advocacy side, I was asked to do a segment for a TV program called Mystery Diagnosis on Discovery Health Channel. It was the first time that PCOS was actually really televised, and it was difficult for me. You know, my weight has always been up and down, but at the time that I had done the special, I was over 300 pounds. I had extremely low self-esteem, but I knew that what was going on was bigger than what I was feeling. And I just felt compelled to tell my story out of frustration, out of anger. And it wound up being one of the most empowering experiences I think that I've ever had. It led me to connect with literally thousands of other women that literally said to me, oh my goodness, I keep telling people I'm dealing with this, and now I understand what's going on. This is an actual condition. There's something real. It's not, as the show said, a mystery. So it was really a catalyst for a lot more public awareness about the condition, and it helped these women identify and realize that it's okay to speak up and to tell your story, because that's how you find others and that's how you heal yourself. Sometimes living it, you don't really realize what you're going through until you actually hear yourself speaking what you're going through, and then you start to heal because it's out there, and you know that you can confront it and it's okay.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing that it's the most common endocrine disorder of women, and yet most women who have it feel so alone, so isolated? Like you said, it's a mystery disease. Even today, what is it? Something like 6, 7 doctor visits, different doctors before the diagnosis is actually made. Even though it's so many years since you first went on your own journey, it still hasn't changed as much as it should. And that's why we desperately need people just like you advocating and letting women all over the world know that they're not alone and that there is actually hope, right? Isn't that so important for women with PCOS? Did you ever feel at a point in your life that there was no hope, or always knew that there was hope?
Sure. When I was first diagnosed, when I really didn't know what the condition was, when I had grown up in a very strong family unit and had a very strong desire to have a family of my own, I was very lost because I was told, you're never going to have children.
Isn't that terrible to say such a thing? Oh,
yeah. I was told, you need to concentrate on your weight. Okay, well, tell me how I do this, and how do I deal with infertility, and how do you know that I'm never going to have children? So yeah, it was a very difficult process, but as I told you, I had 2 children. You learn coping mechanisms, and you learn a lot through the community, and again through professionals like yourself that have taken the time to research and to understand the condition and to pass it on to the community and to the public as well.
Well, this is great. And as you know, now we're getting into the holidays, and the holidays are a wonderful time, but for some people they can also be a downer, right? It's like if you go to parties and, oh my gosh, look at all that food I can't eat, right? Or you just, don't feel good about yourself. So in terms of the holidays, well, first, could you share maybe some recipes or some ideas of foods that women with PCOS can eat and not feel guilty? Because you already mentioned about guilt. We don't want people to have more guilt. So
right.
Guilt-free recipes or ideas for how to have parties and enjoy yourself and eat delicious things.
Yeah, I mean, the holidays are a time to celebrate and to enjoy yourself. One of the things with women with PCOS is we tend to have high levels of stress, which, as you know, is not exactly a very good thing for a woman with PCOS because it can cause an exacerbation of symptoms. So you want to try to make your holidays enjoyable. A couple things that I recommend is, first of all, going back to that whole communication thing. If you're going to another person's home or to your family's home, ahead of time, talk to the person who's making the menu. Tell them, I may not be able to eat certain things that you're making, and here's why. Don't feel bad about it. And I for example, if I decide, I'm actually going to have myself a piece of Italian bread with my dinner, I will balance that out with eating lean proteins, with eating some vegetables, eating things that I know are good for me, and I'll make the majority of my plate of the things that I'm able to eat, and then I'll allow myself to have a little treat. Another thing that I do is, when it comes to the holidays, a lot of people will want to take in some spirits. So instead of having a mixed drink that could be higher in sugar and calories, I'll have a glass of red wine, which has resveratrol in it, which helps a lot of women with hormone imbalance.
Oh, that sounds great. So for this holiday, are you doing any entertaining yourself, or have you done that in the last few years? Like, what do you like to serve? Have you had any particular party ideas that you personally have tried out that you could recommend yourself?
I do actually make a dish with a complex carbohydrate, the quinoa.
I
And
love quinoa. Love
yeah,
it.
it's one of my favorites. And I usually mix it in with like a mushroom, just the quinoa and the mushroom. And that's kind of like my stuffing instead of using like a traditional stuffing bread that's high in the carbohydrates that I cannot have. So you just make certain substitutions, and they don't have to be major things, and they can still wind up being delicious and enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, is that a lot of foods that people think of as their yummy go-tos are really made with a lot of processed foods, with a lot of, say, starches that have been really bleached and refined flour and such. But you can find wonderful substitutions, right, with whole grains, and you can use other vegetables, starchy vegetables. You've probably seen recipes where they put avocado, into make chocolate souffle out of avocado. And you can use like yams and sweet potatoes because they're so sweet naturally, but they're actually very healthy for you. So it's really great, to be creative and not feel deprived, right? But if you actually do make a mistake, so to speak, and you indulge in something, not to feel guilty, right? Because there's tomorrow and you just make it up. And the worst thing is to feel guilt. It sounds like you spent a fair amount of your time in your life feeling guilty. And you see other women who feel guilty about their condition or their choices. And I think it's to liberate women, say, you're not guilty of anything. This isn't your fault, right? To think that you went to so many doctors and they all accused you of eating in your sleep, sleep eating. And it's like, and just saying that you're lying, basically. And to free women from the idea that that PCOS is their fault. I think that's a really important message that you deliver to women all around the world, wouldn't you say?
I agree. I still to this day, with as much as I advocate and I talk with other women, I go through the same thing that everyone else does. I still feel guilt. I still feel broken.
Ashley, it's not your fault.
You're right. But it's not. But you get so used to being put down that you keep going back to that.
Yeah.
But what I say to people is, you know what? That's okay. Have your breakdown, be upset, be angry at yourself, feel the guilt, go to sleep, and hit the reset button, because tomorrow is a new day and there's nothing preventing you from starting all over again. It's hard. It's not like it's, a broken fingernail or something that will take a few days and it's fixed. This is a lifelong condition.
Right.
Hysterectomy isn't going to resolve it. Menopause isn't going to resolve it. You're living with it, and you have to find ways to manage it over time. One thing I think that's been the hardest for me is realizing that PCOS is not a constant, and as you age and your body changes, so does the way that you have to do things. You have to tweak and make adjustments.
Right.
So.
It certainly manifests somewhat differently over the ages, but it doesn't go away. I think that is an important message. It is a lifelong condition. So tell us a little bit about what you're up to on social media these days.
What am I not up to is the easier question to answer. I'm doing a lot. I have specific things that I do throughout the year to raise awareness for certain symptoms for PCOS. My next big thing that comes up, this is going to be my 4th year doing it, is called Have a Heart for PCOS. And it runs in February along with Heart Health Month. And I feel it's important to bring out some of these symptoms instead of focusing directly on PCOS as a whole, because people don't realize the risks and the consequences if you're not getting diagnosed or treated properly. The Have the Heart for PCOS, I do it because women with PCOS are 4 to 7 times at higher risk for cardiovascular disease. Women with PCOS have insulin resistance, which means that they have a higher risk of diabetes, which leads to the cardiovascular disease. So I do a lot to kind of tie all the different symptoms together and to try to bring the community together. I work with an organization that you work with as well, PCOS Challenge, Sasha Adi, William Patterson, who have been revolutionary in really getting the word out to the public, to our legislators, to the community. And I really kind of follow their lead a lot of times and try to build off of the messages that they're sharing with the community and trying to help people relate to some of these messages on a more personal level.
I don't know how you find the time for all this. And for people to find you on the internet, they look up at PCOS Girl, is that correct?
Yes, it's on all of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm known as PCOS Girl with a little twist, so it's PCOS, then GURL is my handle.
Well, that's great. And if you were going to leave the thousands of women with PCOS who are watching you right now with one small message of hope, what could you say to them?
You're not alone. You are loved, and you are not broken. Stand up, speak out, share your story, not only to empower yourself, but to empower others, to help you realize that there are resources, there is help, and with the proper connections, you're going to be okay.
Well, that is beautiful. And what I want is for you and for me and for all the others out there who are advocates for PCOS to join together to forward this movement and to never look back except to learn, right? To look back and say, you know what, the bad days are gone. We're going to look forward to a beautiful future and a happy 2018. And Ashley, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. And I can't wait to see your program on hearts and PCOS coming up in February and all the other millions of different things that are coming up in your future. And thank you so much again. I look forward to seeing you back on my show. I'm going to invite you back. I want you to know that right now, because you're going to talk and explain all the different things that are coming up, because PCOS is definitely changing the world. We are going forward and we are going to help all those women. So thank you again and have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much and happy holidays to you. And thank you again for being a voice for our community and for caring enough about the patient to do a program like this. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Wow. What another wonderful episode of the Women's Health Beat. We'd like to say thank you to Ashley Levinson for visiting us here today. I told you this was going to be an episode not to be forgotten. And remember, if you have a health and wellness topic or story that affects you and you'd like to share it with the Zubia Live community, make sure to visit our website and download our live stream app at zubialive.com or your favorite app location. But for now, we'd like to say thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
So Celluma is probably the most innovative light therapy device on the market. It's FDA cleared for 9 indications for use, 3 of those on the aesthetic side and 6 of those on the pain management side. So it's really a whole body, whole family device. Anybody can use it, and it's great for upregulating cellular activity that's been compromised either due to illness, disease, trauma, bad behavioral habits, or just the normal aging process.